Erev Tov and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parsha Shmini. Please stay tuned after we finish our piece on Shmini, and we'll be taking a look, God willing, at a section from the Haggadah as well. We are on Os Gimel, section 3, and in order to understand this section, we're going to look at a couple of psukim. The first psukim are in our parsha. This is Perek Yud in Sefer Vayikra, of course, Parsha Shmini, and this is Pasuk Beis. It says as follows: the Torah is telling us about the death of the two sons of Aharon, and it says, "Vateitze eish milifnei Hashem," and a fire came out from before Hashem, "Vatochal osam," and it consumed them, "Vayamusu lifnei Hashem," and they died in front of Hashem. This is Nadav and Avihu, Aharon's two oldest sons. Vayomer Moshe al Aharon, and Moshe said to Aharon, "Hu asher diber Hashem lemor." This is what Hashem spoke, saying, "Bikrovai ekadesh," amongst those closest to me, I will be sanctified. Va'al panei chol ha'am ekaved, and in front of all of the people, I will be honored. Vayidom Aharon, and Aharon was silent. So here we learn, this is the section, these two psukim are taken from the section in the Torah where it tells us about the death of Aharon's two sons. And then that episode is recounted very briefly in Bamidbar, in Parshas Bamidbar. So we're going to look at two psukim there that are very relevant and very important. So this is Parshas Bamidbar, Perek Gimel Pasuk Dalid, and it says as follows: Vayomas Nadav va'Avihu lifnei Hashem, and Nadav and Avihu, again, those are Aaron's two oldest sons, died before Hashem. Behakrivam eish zara lifnei Hashem, when they brought a strange fire in front of Hashem, the Midbar Sinai and Midbar Sinai, uvonim lo hayu lahem, and they had no sons. Vayechahen Elazar v'isamar, and their brothers, Elazar and Isamar, those are Aharon's two youngest sons, served as Kohanim al Pnei Aharon Avihem, in front of Aharon, their father. And that's, as Rashi says, and as most Meforshim say, that means during the lifetime of Aharon, Elazar and Isamar took over for the two sons who had died, Nadav and Avihu, and they begin to serve as Kohanim. So all of the psukim that we just read are the Zera Shimshon's going to refer to them. So let's go right to the Zera Shimshon. Again, Os Gimel in the sefer. It's on page Lamed Vav, Daf Lamed Vav. Medrash. The Zera Shimshon starts with the Medrash Rabbah. Al pasuk acharei Moshe b'nei Aharon vayamusu lifnei Hashem. So the Medrash Rabbah comments on the pasuk of that says after the death of Aaron's two sons when they died in front of Hashem. The Medrash says, "Uvanim lo hayu lahem," and as we know, that's a quote from the pasuk in Bamidbar. And they did not have children. So Nadav and Avihu had no sons of their own. And the Medrash comments, "Ilu hayu lahem banim," if they had sons, hayu kodmin le'elazar v'isamar, then their sons, Nadav and Avihu's sons, would have had precedence, would have come first. The brothers Elazar and Isamar, in terms of serving in the place of their fathers. Kol hakodem benachala, and the Medrash now articulates a rule. Whoever comes first in the laws of inheritance, kodem bechavod, also comes first in terms of inheriting a parent's honor or honorable position. Ubilvad sheyehe noheg keminhag avosa. This is only true if the child follows in the path and follows the actions and customs of his father. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from the Medrash Rabbah. So before the Zera Shimshon continues, let's just pause to understand what's happening here. The Medrash is teaching us something very important, and that is, it's telling us that the only reason Elazar and Isamar took over the positions of Nadav and Avihu, who died in this incident, was because Nadav and Avihu did not have their own children. If Nadav and Avihu had had their own sons, and of course if those sons were old enough, then those sons would have stepped into their father's place. And the Medrash Rabbah says, and because it followed, the reason for that is because we follow the laws of nachala, of inheritance. And if a man were to die, then his property would go to his sons. Only if he did not have sons would it then go to a brother. So the same thing is true here with the positions, and the Medrash Rabbah refers to as kavod. The positions of honor that Nadav and Avihu had would have gone to their sons had they had, again, adult sons old enough to take over for them. But because they did not have sons, their positions went to Elazar and Isamar, their younger brothers. That's what the Medrash Rabbah is telling us. And it also added that the sons only take over if they are fit and appropriate to fill the shoes of the parents. And we'll see that becomes a very important point for the Zera Shimshon. Let's continue now. Makshim. So the Zera Shimshon says, we ask a question. Hechi yolif mihacha. How can we learn from here, she'im ein haben nohe kaminhag avosav, that if the son does not follow in the righteous paths of his father, dahainu she'eno mamale mokum aviv, which means he's not fit to fill the place of his father, o she'eno ro'oi, or he's just completely unfit at all. In other words, you could have a very good person, but maybe they're not good enough to take over in the position that the father has. That's the first scenario. Oh, she'eno roy, or you could have a completely inappropriate person at all who couldn't possibly be considered a candidate for the high position that the father was holding. Eno yoresh kivodo. How do we know that such a son, again, who's not fit to take over for the father, does not inherit his honorable position? So the Zera Shimshon's question is, the Medrash presumably is looking at the pasuk and the incident with Nadav and Avihu and their death, and it's learning from there. It's actually learning out from there. That is its source. That's the makor. It's learning out from there. Two laws. One, that Elazar and Isamar only took over because Nadav and Avihu didn't have sons. And it's also learning that if you have sons, but if a person dies and the sons are not appropriate, that they don't take over the father's position. So the Zera Shimshon says, okay, we might agree with that second law. It certainly makes sense, misvara, from logic, that the son shouldn't take over if they're not worthy. However, where did the Medrash Rabbah see that in the Psukim? How did the Medrash Rabbah deduce that or infer that from the Psukim? That's his starting point question. Let's continue in the second paragraph. V'nakdim medrash acher. We first have to look at a different medrash. Huva sham b'samach, which is brought there in the Medrash Rabbah, close by the medrash we just looked at. So we're going kind of right back to where we were a moment ago in the Medrash Rabbah. And here's a quote. Rabbi Yochanan b'shem Rabbi Levi Amar. Rabbi Yochanan said, in the name of Rabbi Levi, Lo mesu b'nei Aharon, the sons of Aharon did not die, ella al yedei shelo hayu lahem banim, except through the fact that they did not have sons. That's a very unusual statement. Let's just continue to see the next unusual statement in the Medrash Rabbah. Abba Chanan Omer, Abba Chanan says, Al Yedei Shelo Hayu Lahem Noshim. It was through the fact the deaths of Aaron's sons came about through the fact that they were not married, that they did not have wives. So of course there's a discussion in the Medrash Rabbah about these two reasons, and the Meforshim talk about how does this make sense? And there are other reasons given over there in the Medrash Rabbah, but for our purposes to focus on the Zera Shimshon's point, he says, think of these two reasons: A, that the sons of Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu did not have sons, and then B, lesser for his purposes of less importance, is the second follow-up quote. It's because they weren't married. So let's see what he says. The Hikshu HaMeforshim and the commentators ask, V'chi mipnei shelo hayu lahem banim nischayvu misa. And because they didn't have sons, that led to them being chayav misa, that led to the death penalties that were enacted. Uma haveluhu lemevat. What could they have done? That means if a person, it's not completely in a person's control whether or not he has children. So yes, it's true that a person it can get married, but if a person is married and trying to have children, then it's not within that person's control. So what does it mean that somehow they were chayav misa because they didn't have sons? Uladida nami kasha. And for us, there's another question. How is Moshe able to say Hu asher diber Hashem lemor. This episode of our own sons of Nadav and Avihu dying is what Hashem referred to when he said, Bikrovai ekadesh, with those close to me, I will be sanctified. How could Rashi say that? And the Zera Shimshon will continue to explain his question. Upirish Rashi, and Rashi explains on Moshe's statement, Shehem gedolim mimeni umimeka. Moshe said to Aaron, your sons who died are greater than myself and than you are, Aharon. So Moshe made a very powerful statement to Aharon, in which he said, when God talks about being sanctified through those closest to him, he's referring to your sons. And your sons are even closer, even greater spiritually than the two of us. So the Zera Shimshon says, how could Moshe say that? V'halo b'perakama de brachos, it's stated in the first parak of Mesechus Brachos, Maskinon, we conclude, dehecha delo havule bonim klal. If a person suffers a situation in which they are not blessed with sons at all, with children at all, lo havu yisurin shel ahava. This is not considered a punishment of love. And let's pause here for a second. That Gemara, the Gemara in Brachos, is talking about different kinds of sufferings that a person can undergo. And the Gemara describes something called a phenomenon called Yisurin Shel Ahava, suffering because Hashem loves a person, meaning that the person has done nothing wrong that's connected in any way with this suffering that comes upon them. However, they are on such a high spiritual level, such a madrega, they're so righteous that Hashem sometimes brings suffering on them in order to have their experience in Olam Hazeh in this world be a less pleasurable one, and therefore it multiplies their sechar, their reward, in the next world in Olam Haba. And because they are of such a righteous spiritual level, that's something that they would want. That's something that they cherish. They're less interested, they're less focused on their experiences in this world, and certainly in pleasure in this world, and they're almost single-mindedly focused on schar and reward and spiritual reward in the world to come. So the Gemara in Brachos says that's Yisurin Shel Ava, that sometimes Hashem brings suffering on a person in order to increase their reward in the next world. But the Gemara there says if a person doesn't have children, then that does not fall in the category of Yisurin Shel Ava. So the Zera Shimshon says, if Aharon's sons were not zocha to have children, then that would indicate in some way that they were lacking in merit. They were lacking in zechuyos. If they were lacking in zechuyos, why did Moshe say to Aaron, your sons are greater than you and I? Your sons are such tzaddikim on such a high madrega that they're closer to Hashem and they're even greater than the two of us, if we see that they were lacking in zechuyos to the extent that they weren't blessed with children. That's the Zera Shimshon's question. Now he's going to continue. It makes sense according to the other reasons, and we didn't see those reasons. Zera Shimshon didn't quote them for us. The other reasons that were brought in the Medrash Rabbah about why Aharon's sons ultimately suffered the deaths that they suffered. And now he's going to give examples. O shelo nasu nashim. Possibly it was because they chose not to get married. Osha mechusarin me'il, or because when they brought their offering of fire, they were missing their me'il, one of the special garments that a Kohen is supposed to wear, that a Kohen Gadol is supposed to wear when bringing the kind of offering that they brought. So they were missing. It was chaser. They were missing it. And the Medrash Rabbah suggests those two reasons as other possible reasons why they suffered the fate that they suffered. So the Zera Shimshon continues, Tirat HaKorban Aaron. So the Korban Aaron explains, or answers, SheHaKadosh Baruch Hu Raglei Chasidav Yishmor. In general, Hashem always protects the feet, the path of his Hasidim, of his pious ones. Elo Shebepam Hazos, except in this case with Aaron's sons, Rotza Sheyiyu Shogigim Be'eze Isur. Hashem wanted, it was Hashem's plan that they would unintentionally violate a certain prohibition. V'lo shamra me'achet, and God did not protect them from the sin. He did not protect them from committing a sin. Why? Kadesh yiskadesh habayis al yadehem, because God wanted the bias, the temple, or at that time it was in the Midbar, so it was the Mishkan, to be sanctified specifically through them. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo avidina below dina, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu never carries out a judgment unless it can be justified. V'ayin sham, see there in the Korban Aron. So what the Zera Shimshon is saying is that if the sons of Aaron, if Nadav and Avihu had actually done something wrong, for example, they didn't wear the proper clothing when they brought the offering that they brought, or they didn't follow the mitzvah to get married and they didn't get married. So then we understand what the dynamic over here, which is Hashem knew that they were extraordinarily righteous people. He wanted he wanted them to be in a situation where they would commit a kind of sin. And as the quote said, Shogegim be'eze iser, they would commit it unintentionally in the sense that they didn't realize the full consequences of their actions. And then they would be punished with their death. And this would sanctify Hashem's name in the sense, as Rashi actually says on our psukim here, that people would forevermore remember the lesson of these two great tzaddikim dying because of what they did, and they would understand the incredibly high level of sanctity that the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash have, and the incredibly high level of care and even fear that we have to have when we're doing anything related to the Mishkan and later the Beis HaMikdash. So Hashem wanted that lesson to be an eternal lesson that came from the deaths of our own sons. But that only fits if they had done something wrong. But according to this reason that they didn't have sons, shelo hayu lahem banim, kosher, that's difficult. How could Moshe say they were so righteous and yet they did a little type of sin, and that's why this whole thing happened? In the case of the not having the sons, that's not connected to a sin on their part. Let's continue. V'yesh lomar de'isa b'medrash, and we can say that it is stated in another medrash. This is from the Yalkut Shimoni. It's based on it's quoting a pasuk in Tehillim. Al pasuk v'ro'a im derech otzev bi. This pasuk comes from Tehillim Perek Kuf Lamed Tes, and at the end of that perek, David HaMelech is saying to Hashem, test me, and examine my actions, and see if I'm worthy, or if I'm corrupt in any way, or if I'm insincere in any way. And David is trying to say, Hashem, I want to be totally judged as righteous and pious and committed to you on the highest level. That's the kind of theme that David is talking about when this pasuk is quoted there at the end of that perek in Tehillim. So the Yalkut Shimoni says as follows: Amar David lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. David said in front of Hashem, Ribono Shalom, Im osid ani laholid banim, if in the future I'm going to give birth to children, so this was before David HaMelech had children, ulahachi secha, and they are going to anger you. If you see that in the future some of my children are going to cause problems and anger you, mutavli, then it would be better for me va'anochi holech ariri, if I were to go childless. Ad kan lashono, until here's a quote from the Yalkut Shimoni. So David HaMelech's commitment to Hashem was on such a high level, and his saying to Hashem, test me, examine me, went to the extent of saying, not only me, David HaMelech said, not only me, test future generations and see if I'm going to have children that will not be worthy and that will cause you, Hashem, that will go against your word, and if so, I'd rather be childless, David HaMelech said, according to the Yalkut Shimon. Im kain, if so, Misha hu tzaddik gomor, then we see that someone who is a complete tzaddik, v'shehamakom bo charbo, and Hashem has chosen that person to have a very special role. Im osid hu lahoylid banim machisim lemakom, if that person is destined to have children whose actions will anger Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu osa imo chesed godol, then Hashem will do a tremendous kindness with such a righteous person, lichbosh mayano, to close off his wellspring, meaning to prevent him from having children, shelo yu lo banim, so that he won't bring wicked children into the world. Ukimosha asa leNoach, just like Hashem did regarding Noach. That's a reference to the fact, and Rashi brings it down in Parsha Noach, that's a reference to the fact that Noah did not give birth until he was 500 years old. But if you look at his contemporaries, you see that they were giving birth at a much earlier age. And so the Medrash brings down, and Rashi quotes it, that had Moshe had his children earlier, Noah had children earlier than 500 years old, they would not have been righteous. And so Hashem prevented him from having children until the circumstances were such that he was older and everything would fit, that his children that he would give birth to at that time, he would have the ability to bring righteous children into the world. So we see the same idea by Noah that's reflected in the pasuk in Tehillim by David HaMelech. V'zehu she'amar Moshe, and this is what Moshe was referring to when he said, "Hu asher diber Hashem." This is what Hashem spoke to me about Nadav and Avihu being so righteous. Ho'il she'amar li HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'krovaya kadesh v'chule. Since Hashem said to me, "I will be sanctified to those closest to me." Achshav ani roa shehem gedoli mimeni umimeka. Now I see that it's not you, Aaron, and it's not me. It's your two sons, your two oldest sons. Umasha lo hayalahem banim, and the fact that they didn't have children, and one might think that shows that they were lacking in zechuyos in a certain regard. No, mishum shetzipa hakadosh baruch hu shelo yu b'neihem reuyim. It wasn't because they were lacking in zechuyos. It was because Hashem saw that they were destined to have children who would be unworthy, and therefore Hashem saved these tzaddikim gemurim, these completely righteous men, from bringing such children into the world. And again, the Zera Shimshon has developed that was the prayer of David HaMelech, and that's what happened in a similar vein with Noah, and that's exactly what Hashem did with Nadav and Avihu. Now let's go back, and the Zera Shimshon is going to go back to his original question and tie everything together in this last paragraph. V'hashta yolif hamedrash hanizkar le'el. And now the medrash that we quoted in the beginning learns kol hakodem benachala v'chulei. Everyone who comes first in inheritance comes first for kavod. Ubilvad, and only if the sons have the correct type actions to follow in the footsteps of their fathers do they take over the positions. Sharei akosov omer, because the pasuk says vayomas nadav ve'avihu v'chulei. The pasuk that we saw in Bamidbar says Nadav and Avihu died, uvonim lo hayu lohem, and they didn't have sons, mishum hachi, and it's because of this vayechahen Elazar, that Elazar and Isamar began to serve in the place of Nadav and Avihu. Ha'im hayu lohem banim. So the Medrash says if they had children, if Nadav and Avihu had children, lo hayu miskayim vayechahen Elazar, then it would not have been fulfilled that Elazar and Isamar took over for their brothers, because the sons would have taken over, as we said before, for Nadav and Avihu. Lefisha habonim hayu nichnasim b'makom avosehem, because it's the sons who take over the father's positions as long as they're worthy. Uminon nolif nami, and from this incident we can also learn she'enom nichnasim eladavka kishehem ru'uyim. The sons only take over if they are appropriate. V'lo kishe'enom ru'uyim, and not if they're inappropriate. She'enom noagim minhag abosehem, if they don't follow in the path of the fathers. Shahare Nadav ve'avihu, because Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's oldest sons, shahayu miyudav shel makom, they were so knowledgeable about and so close to Hashem, lo haya efshar shiyu lahem banim she'enom mihuganim, that Hashem never would have allowed them to have children that were not appropriate, kinira le'el, as we saw before, as we established in the previous paragraph. The adarab, and just the opposite, mishum hachi, it is because they were destined to have sons that weren't appropriate, lo hayu lahem banim. That's why Hashem prevented them from having children. So the Zera Shimshon says, we see that the Medrash Rabbah is in fact able to learn out from this incident both laws. The law is that it is the sons who take over for the fathers, and the adjunct law to that only if the sons are appropriate and roy to fulfill the father's positions. Why? Because Nadav and Avihu's sons, if they had them, could only have been the most righteous people, the Zera Shimshon says. But because they were destined not to have righteous sons, they were held back from having children at all. So the Zera Shimshon has tied all of the different pieces together here. And certainly there's such an important takeaway for us, which is that the idea of how we raise our children as we know, is incredibly important. And here the Zera Shimshon saying it's so important that we raise children who, at the least, of course, we want more for our children that they should fill our places. But at the very least, we raise children who share our values and grow up inculcated with our values, so that they can take over for us. And of course, God willing, we should be zocheh to have children who exceed what we do and supersede what we do and go to even a higher madrega and a higher spiritual level. Yasher koach to everyone for participating in the Parsha Shmini, and God willing, we'll get together next time.